Hello everyone, this is KansaiDorito, and this is the 5th episode of Girls Frontline 2 Explained, where we talk about the girls, their skills, some of their backgrounds to get you caught up. Today we're going to talk about Krolik, aka Super Sentai Bunny, aka Mudrock from Arknights. Krolik is a brand new unit, making her debut with Girls Frontline 2. Personality-wise, Krolik is a bit of a tsundere. I'd explain what that is, but you're probably a fucking weeb, so we're going to move on. Krolik means bunny in Russian, and by complete coincidence, she really likes bunnies, and anything related to them. She's also got some kind of honor code that dictates she fight in melee combat. While she thinks true battle is only within an arm's length, she could somehow understand the weirdly poetic speech of Nemesis, who talks like fucking Zero from Borderlands. Her weapon of choice is the blade, more specifically, her blade. Hare, named after the animal. The hare. You want the history of hares, don't you? You know I'm the, anime gun girl guy, right? Fine! 65 million years ago, the Earth was a very different place. Before guns, before war, before weapons of iron and tools of stone, Mother Nature liked her battles to be fought with tooth and nail. But our subject today is no predator, but prey. Glyries would roam the plains and woodlands, an herbivore eating as much flora as they could, before being brutally mauled by the predators of their time, as is the natural order. The more evasive would prevail, their skulls taking on a more aerodynamic shape. As hundreds of thousands of years progressed, the cruel game of chance would cause the ancient rabbits to mutate. Some gaining strengths they would pass on to their children, others being not so fortunate, most being not so fortunate. This selective pressure would eventually shift away from their rodent-like feet and legs, morphing through generations, shifting year after year, generation after generation, until the Glyries was no more, leaving behind the oldest of the lagomorphs, Paleolagus. Paleolagus is the precursor to the rabbits, hares, and pikas, and each would take strengths from the ancestor and specialize, through the random hand of fate and the survival of the fittest. Eventually splitting off from the pikas, becoming their own thing, the Leporidae. Leporidae? Is that really what they're called? What the fuck? The Leporidae would develop stronger hind legs, allowing them to run faster and jump higher. Their ears would extend, allowing them to hear predators from further away and to cool off faster, using their ears as heat sinks. Their teeth would evolve to better handle their herbivorous diet, their skulls arc-shaped to cut through the wind, and their eyes large and bulging, giving them incredible field of view and night vision for evasion at night. As we all know, rabbits and hares are exceptional breeders, and are able to—
Hey, Dorito.
Huh?
Hey, Dorito. What about Krolik, though?
Oh, yeah, I got kind of lost in the sauce there. Sorry about that. Let's take a look at Krolik and her skills, cons, and upgrades. Before we get to her passive, I want to talk about a certain debuff that's going to come up a lot. Overburn. Overburn on its own is a fairly underwhelming debuff. It deals 10% of the attacker's damage as fixed damage at the end of the turn to the target and all enemies within one tile. If it were just this, no one would care. However, with the right burn characters, and by that I mean Sharkree, Overburn turns into the strongest debuff in the game. And I won't get too deep into it, but just keep in mind that when I say Overburn, there's a lot going on under the hood, and Krolik is the current best applicator of Overburn. Her passive is Embers, which does two things. Firstly, it increases the damage Krolik deals to enemies with Overburn by 15%, which is nice, but if I'm being honest, Krolik will rarely get a chance to capitalize on this. She's usually the one to apply it, and most of the time, applying Overburn to someone means imminent death. The only real time you'd benefit from this part of her passive is bosses and elites, and if I'm being honest, Krolik doesn't really do much against either. That being said, the second part of her passive is incredible. At the end of her action, she applies Overburn to the two closest enemies within 5 tiles for 2 turns. This part is awesome, and a nearby Sharkree will follow up on both targets if they're in her range. Spreading that juicy Overburn is really good, but also means you have to position her close to enemies, and due to her squishiness, you need a good healer backing her up or she's gonna die, which Krolik does. A lot. Her C4 adds 2 range to the AoE, bringing it up to a clean 7, and is in my opinion, damn near required. I don't have it. 5 range is still close enough that most enemies will be able to immediately turn tail and smoke her. 7 gives her just enough room that she can find decent cover and get her debuff off. Her C6 increases crit damage against enemies with Overburn by 20%. While this is an improvement, it's not much for the reasons I mentioned earlier. Her basic attack, Instantaneous Slash, should be avoided at all costs. 80% attack, 1 range, and 1 stability damage is just not enough to justify moving your bunny girl out of cover and walking her up to an enemy she can't kill. Seriously. If she's got nothing better to do on her turn, it's just better to move her somewhere where she'll hit someone with her passive when her turn ends and do absolutely nothing. first skill is Crushing Revolution, an AoE with one range that deals 120% of her attack to one target, and all surrounding targets, as well as giving her a confectance point. If there's no other enemies within 3 tiles of the user, she gets 5 tiles of additional movement. This skill comes at no cooldown or confectance cost. You hopefully don't need me to tell you that this is her real basic attack, and this is what you should be using 99% of the time instead of her actual basic attack. This improves on everything. Decent scaling, even amongst gun wielders, for its consistency, 9 tiles of potential damage, confectance gain, and a reposition. It's seriously a great attack, and with absolutely no cost or cooldown, Krolik will absolutely shred through clumps of enemies, and the extra movement will bail her out of certain doom or even let her advance further, using the movement to position her to get her passive overburn on important targets. Her C1 lets her ignore 30% of the target's defense if they're broken, giving her a bit more damage on a break and against bosses. Quenching Slash is exceptionally good at applying overburn, and combined with her passive, it will let you apply it up to 3 enemies in a turn. But that's not all it does. Quenching Slash deals 150% of her attack as burn damage and gives her 2 confectance points. This is nice, but the real kicker is the last part. After her attack, she teleports back to wherever she started her attack, immediately causing her passive on a return, letting her execute a faraway enemy and return right back to cover to keep the pressure on nearby enemies. I'd really recommend using it this way, foregoing a close kill and running deep into the backline to get a quick kill and then getting overburn on the closer enemies when she returns. Because of Krolik's mind-shattering 9 tiles of movement, she can very easily run out of range of your ARs, letting them stay somewhere safe while Krolik gets a pick, only to return and have them mow down whoever's close when she's back. Unfortunately, its long base cooldown of 3 is going to leave you high and dry more often than not. Luckily, she does have a very specific remedy for this that we'll get to later, so don't write it off just yet. Her C2 gives it an extra 10% attack to its scaling, bringing it on par with Ksenia's ult, and if you use her, you know it hurts. Speaking of ults, her ultimate is Slaughter Sequence. Krolik chooses a cardinal direction and charges 7 tiles, which combined with her 9 base movement lets her move an absolutely staggering 16 tiles. During her charge, she hits the first enemy in line for 130% of her attack as burn damage, and if the enemy is overburned, she ignores their cover damage reduction and gets another 5 tiles of movement, bringing the total up to 21 tiles of movement. Her ult comes at the cost of 3 confectance points, letting you use it twice before she runs out of gas when her meter's full. Because of its unremarkable scaling, it's best used as a repositioning tool to either get her out of a bad spot or to put her in a good one. Her C3 is super good, refunding you 2 points of confectance if you kill someone with it, giving your emergency reposition move a more often than not uptime, and letting you gap close without full confectance and not dooming yourself to being stuck deep. And her C5 makes her attack on overburned enemies a guaranteed crit, which while not common is still nice, especially when combined with her passive 15% damage against overburned enemies, leading to some surprisingly good damage. Now that we know what her skills do, let's take a look at her spread of nodes, and I'm going to level with you. She's got some really good ones, and there's a case to be made for running any of them in any combination. So if you're going to take Krolik all the way, don't lock yourself into a singular line of thought. Her first node is Momentary Focus, which brings her ult cost down to 2 confectance points, which without dupes means you can zip 3 of these off before you run out of gas. But combined with her C3, she can ult for free if you get a kill, which is really cool. Her second node is Fierce Predator, which increases Crushing Revolution's damage by 30% if she's attacking a single target, letting her confirm those risky kills more often. Blazing Fury increases her damage when there's no allies within 3 tiles of her when she attacks, which is basically 99% of the time, making this basically a free 10% damage buff. Proud Challenger reduces Quenching Slash's cooldown from 3 turns to 1 if she kills an enemy with it, and considering Quenching Slash is her best scaling skill as well as applying a consistent overburn, this node is a must pick. You're putting yourself at a severe disadvantage by not running it. Instinctive Pursuit gives her Blazing Assault 2, a 15% damage buff for 2 turns if an enemy on the field has overburn. While this skill also seems like a gimme, enemies with overburn tend to die soon after getting it applied to them, so this uptime might be a little bit of a playstyle shift if you're used to insta-killing overburned enemies. Last node is Hidden Poise, which increases crit rate by 10% if she's moved more than 3 tiles, which is basically every time with Krolik. 10% crit rate may seem underwhelming, but it can help break a lot of important crit thresholds if you're the kind to do that. Otherwise, critting more often is just nice in general. Her capstone is Art of Violence, which does a couple of very important things for her in particular. Firstly, it makes her immune to Frozen, a movement debuff that if stacked twice turns to Frigid, a proper root. As a melee unit, she lives and dies on your ability to put her in the right places at the right time, and being unable to move is usually a death sentence. It also increases damage by 5%, which is nice. The main drawback here is that these effects only apply while under the effects of a burn buff, which she can actually apply to herself pretty consistently if you run the Instinctive Pursuit node. Otherwise, you need to rely on someone like Cheetah or Ksenia, both of which I made a video about if you're interested. Weapon options are pretty sparse, and currently have 2 different traits that I'll explain when I get to them. None of the swords are unusable, but there is a clear better set of options. The Pluma Edge is honestly not bad. Firstly, its trait gives Krolik an extra Confectance point once per turn when she uses an active attack, which is nice. Its effect is situational though, increasing damage against non-covered enemies by 10 to 20%. In my experience, most enemies end their turns near cover, so this doesn't come into play too often, but its higher base attack when compared to the blue swords makes it a better option. The Hare has an incredible trait, giving her an extra action after she kills 3 enemies with an active attack. Considering her quote-unquote basic attack is AoE, you can really lay the hammer down on tightly packed enemies, or just use that extra turn for an extra pick, or better positioning. An extra action is a powerful thing, so having a refreshing one on an SR sword is incredible. The effect is no slouch either, increasing damage by 10 to 20% if she's moved more than a certain amount of tiles, scaling from 6 at calibration 0 to 3 and lowering down to 3 for the last 3 calibrations. This is basically free, since keeping Krolik on the move is something you're going to do often. Hare is a great pick and helps Krolik enhance her strengths, and the reset on every 3rd kill is incredible. Seriously. As for the SSRs, we're going to start with Rectrix, which shares a trait with the Pluma Edge. It's got the highest attack out of any sword in the game, and a whopping 25% increased crit rate, increasing Krolik's starting 30% crit rate up to 55%. Its effect deals 10 to 20% fixed damage to enemies that aren't at full HP, which isn't hard to pull off at all, but really doesn't do much for her assassin playstyle since most enemies she's going to hit are going to be full HP. This also applies to the second effect, which increases crit damage by 20% against enemies with lower HP than her. Despite this, Rectrix is still a great weapon, but stands a bit at odds with Krolik's design. She seems to be designed around opening up for your teammates, picking off peskier backline troops and applying her overburn so your team can follow up. Rectrix definitely seems to be designed around a finisher type playstyle, which can work with Krolik, but maybe not as effectively. I could be totally wrong though. Let me know how you use your Krolik in the comments. The last sword is the Battle Pass exclusive, Crowned Jackalope, which shares its trait with Hare, making it awesome right off the bat. It sports a higher base attack than both the SR options, but also a 15% attack boost, which is always nice. Its effect continues this saucy goodness, increasing damage on enemies with full HP, or less HP percent than Krolik by 15 to 30%. If you play Krolik optimally, you can get this to proc basically every time, and you'll definitely notice the increased damage. The second effect deals 2 stability damage before an attack to a target out of cover, which like I said before, doesn't come into play much. That being said, the Crowned Jackalope is clearly her best option, not only because of the 3-kill reset, but the increased base attack, the free 15% increase, and the basically constantly active effect. If Krolik is your girl, give it to her, and then buy the skin, and then look at her ass, and then sit back and watch the sunset knowing that of all the waifu warriors out there, you're the top dog. Attachments are pretty simple. You want Phase Strike. I mean, who else are you gonna give your Phase Strike blade attachments to? Ulrid? She only deals physical damage, don't be dumb. Quit arguing with me through your screen, I can't hear you. If you don't have Phase Strike, and we're farming attachments for the Ulrid you apparently have, Krolik can take physical boost as well, but to a diminished capacity. Burn boost isn't bad either, But why are you farming burn boost on Rifle Blade? There's no unit besides Krolik in the game that can take advantage of it. If you do have a burn boosted Krolik though, let me know in the comments so I can insult you for being cavalier with your resources. Like basically all DPS characters, you want attack, attack percent, crit rate percent, and crit damage percent. And if you have Rectrix, focus more on crit damage percent. Alright, now that you've got a coked out Bun Bun, let me clear a stage and show you how much ass she can kick, as well as how to use her. But today we're going to be doing another encounter, this time with an elite, because I believe this is where Kolic shines the brightest, target-rich environments. So I've got the classic burn team, Sharkri, Chongjo, Xenia, and Krolik. First, Sharkri's going to get into range of all the close enemies and take out the spawner. I'm going to put Chongjo into a position where she can hit the crate next round to pincer the elite. Now I'm going to move Krolik to the first enemy she can hit and use Crushing Revolution. I'm going to move up Ksenia to take advantage of the overburn and kill the bear. Now that the majority of enemies are dealt with, I can move QJ into the open to open up that lane. Now I'm going to take out a frog with Quenching Slash so Sharkri kills the bat on return. And then double buff Sharkri to get some damage onto this elite. Because Ksenia can't kill the frog, we're just going to have her heal to be safe. Now I'm going to have Krolik kill the frog. And because of hair, she'll get a reset, which we'll use to get more damage onto the elite and use Overburn to bait out Sharkri's follow-up, closing the encounter. And like that, Krolik wipes out a nest of monster goons with her Flame of the Firehawk. Now that you know all there is to know about Krolik, you've mastered the blade and can open up your own Super Sentai Bunny Dojo. If I missed anything, got something wrong, or you just want to tell me about something you liked or you didn't, please leave a comment. I've read every last one without fail since this channel's inception, and I never plan on straying from that. As always, thank you so much for watching, especially to the returning viewers. It's your guys' constant support and motivation to keep me going. Now, before I say anything else, I wanted to address some comments I received, as well as some Discord DMs that I felt would be better addressed here. I've been asked if there was any way to directly support me, and up until yesterday, there wasn't. I was convinced to start a Ko-fi page, and currently, it's live. I put it up yesterday, and a very vigilant couple of donators managed to dig it out of my updated descriptions early. I could never bring myself to ask any of you for any kind of monetary support. But if you wanted to see your waifu in your preferred skin for an upcoming guide, or just in her future appearances, it's on the page, and we'll get you a mention at the end of her guide, or on the next one if I've already done them. The link is in the description for this video, and every other guide has been updated circa yesterday. Now that that's out of the way, we can talk about who's next, and by popular demand, it's Mosin, who has been just barely out of first place for the last 3 videos. Sabrina, Litara, and Lada are currently fighting for first after Mosin. And it's pretty close, so if you want to see any of them first, let me know. I want to thank you all one last time for being the best community ever, and hopefully, I'll see you all in the next video. Stay strapped.
Dragovich.
You should have been my finest agent. It would have all been so much simpler.
Dragovich!
chance, I'm gonna kill you! Try to fuck with my mind! You swear, you don't know anything! You tried to turn me against my own! Tried to make me kill my own president! Tried?